Instead of reading Act Two of Romeo and Juliet, we will be reading some summaries of them. So we are on Shakespeare.com and I'm on Act Two, Scene One, and there's a scene summary. Benvolio and Mercutio are looking for Romeo because Romeo, after the party, he ran away from his friends and disappeared. So, our scene summary, after another introduction from the chorus informing us that Romeo and Juliet have officially fallen in love, Romeo steps on stage to inform us that he finds himself unable to leave the Capulets because he's so drawn to Juliet. After he withdraws in search of Juliet, Benvolio and Mercutio appear in search of him. Mercutio tries to draw him out using Rosaline's name, but the two are unsuccessful and decide to call it quits. So Benvolio and Mercutio leave. Romeo runs away from his friends and towards Juliet's yard. Now we're going to look at Act 2, Scene 2. We'll look at a summary of this. Oh, my apologies. Sorry about that. Act 2, Scene 2 summary. We have Romeo, Juliet, and the nurse. The nurse has a very small part. Romeo stands below Juliet's balcony, marveling at her beauty. He's secretly spying on her. Not knowing he's there, Juliet speaks, wondering why Romeo must be a Montague and she a Capulet. She thinks a name is simply a word, and it would be easy for Romeo to take a new name and therefore not be forbidden to her. Also, during this speech, she thinks Romeo is not listening to her, and she says aloud, Romeo, if you love me, I will abandon my family, I will leave my name, I will leave everybody, and I will run away with you and be your wife. Romeo reveals himself, agreeing to forsake the name of Romeo if he can have her love. So they both basically promise to leave their families and leave their names if the other one falls in love. Juliet warns him that as a Montague, he'll be killed if he's spotted with her, but Romeo doesn't care. And after much discussion, the two swear their love for each other and agree to be married. Yes, they met just a little while ago. They held hands. They talked a little bit. They kissed. He runs into her backyard, hides, sneaks up on her. They have a brief conversation. And yes, they both agree to be married. Romeo forgets all about Rosaline, and Juliet forgets all about Paris and the fact that she's supposed to marry him and fall in love with him. So that is Act 2, Scene 2. Let's find out what happens in Act 2, Scene 3. We've got our summary. Romeo and Friar Lawrence. As Romeo approaches, Friar Lawrence delivers a speech about the power of herbs and plants to both heal and poison. So Friar Lawrence has a nice garden, and he can actually make flowers into poisons or healing potions, almost like an apothecary. Romeo enters halfway through, waits for the friar to finish, and then asks for his help in marrying Romeo and Juliet. Yes, Friar Lawrence can marry them. He is a priest, so he can legally marry them. Friar Lawrence marvels at how quickly Romeo switched from loving Rosaline to loving Juliet, and he also realizes that a marriage between a Montague and a Capulet just might put an end to the feud between the families, so he agrees to perform the ceremony. All right. He knows that this is secret. He knows that the parents and the families know nothing about this. So he's like, all right, I'll marry you. The two of you just met a couple hours ago. Sure, I'll marry you. This will put an end to the feud and everything's going to be wonderful from now on. But remember, it's a tragedy. Probably won't turn out that way. Let's look at Act 2, Scene 4, the scene summary. And we've got Mercutio and Benvolio. They're going to tease Romeo, who sends a secret message to Juliet through her nurse. So we see Romeo and Juliet. It's a secret that they're going to get married, but Friar Lawrence and the nurse are both aware of what's happening. Our scene summary. Still in search of Romeo, Mercutio and Benvolio finally run into their friend on the street. We learned that Benvolio and the Montagues have received a threatening note from Tybalt directed at Romeo. So Tybalt is very upset that Romeo crashed the party that night and he wants to fight him. So Juliet's cousin wants to fight Romeo. Mercutio is worried about lovesick Romeo's ability to best the talented Tybalt in a duel. Soon enough, they run into Romeo and they note that he's no longer moping. Romeo and Mercutio banter, they goof around for a while until Juliet's nurse arrives. She pulls Romeo aside and tells her to tell Juliet to meet him at Friar Lawrence's cell that afternoon, all while keeping arrangements secret from his friends. So Juliet needs to meet Romeo that afternoon at Friar Lawrence's cell to get married. Cell is like kind of his office where he works and lives. Now, mind you, Romeo and Juliet have not even known each other 24 hours, and they're going to get married. All right, let's look at Act 2, Scene 5. We'll look at the summary for this. And it's Juliet and the nurse. The nurse is bringing some good news. As she waits for the nurse to come back from her secret meeting with Romeo, Juliet bemoans how long it seems to be taking. Finally, the nurse returns. But before she gives the good news, she decides to have a little fun with her charge and goes on and on about her aching bones. At last, the nurse tells Juliet that she's to meet Romeo and Friar Lawrence today. And as a bonus, she'll leave a ladder out so that Romeo can climb into Juliet's room that evening. That way, the newly married couple can spend the night together. So Romeo and Juliet are going to get married that afternoon. And Romeo needs to sneak into her bedroom at night so they can spend the night together. Now, if Romeo and Juliet just got married with Friar Lawrence and they did not spend the night together, they did not sleep together, it would be really easy to annul this marriage, to say, hey, this marriage doesn't count. Let's get rid of it. Let's pretend like it never happened. But if Romeo and Juliet get married by Friar Lawrence and then they sleep together, there's no going back. There's no way to annul the marriage. There's no way to say, hey, this was a mistake. So in order to make this an official marriage, Romeo and Juliet do need to spend the night together. And Friar Lawrence and the nurse are helping that happen without the knowledge of either of the families. Let's look at Act 2, Scene 6. And we've got our scene summary here. Romeo and Juliet are going to get married. They're about to get married. They're at Friar Lawrence's cell. The friar warns Romeo not to let his passions run away with him. Juliet enters and the two lovers greet each other enthusiastically. Friar Lawrence entreats them to follow him so that they might perform the marriage ceremony. So in between Act 2, Scene 6 and Act 3, that's when Romeo and Juliet get married. There is no wedding ceremony on the stage, and that could be because they didn't want to show a holy ceremony on stage. It might also be because these were male actors playing these parts. So that could be a reason why they didn't want to show this on stage, because that was illegal back then for men to, people of the same gender, to get married. That's not the case anymore. Now, you saw the scene summaries here. The videos, I think you can always go back and check out. These interviews give some great background information, and kind of get you into the character a little bit. So I hope this helped you understand Act 2 a little bit better. When we go to Act 3 next, we will be reading along and I will be providing some commentary as well. So thank you for listening, everyone. Take care.